Welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis.
Hi, and welcome back to What's the Point? I'm your host, Bill Ellis, and today's guest is going to help us understand how we can accept some of the curveballs, some of the unexpected things that happen in life, accept them, adapt to them, and move forward, and do that in a way that's true to ourselves, and take that and also turn that into some compassion and empathy for others. My guest today is Diana Fritz. Hello, Diana. How are you? And thank you for being here.
Hello, and thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Good. Diana is a leadership and change consultant. She has been in the professional business world in a variety of capacities for 25 plus years. And we can certainly have a discussion, Diana, about business and how you got to where you are in business and all that kind of stuff. But I think that one of the really key elements of our conversation will center around what you are dealing with, what you have dealt with when it comes to on the unexpected and the never welcome cancer. Will you explain to the audience what your situation is in that regard?
Yes, happy to. 11 years ago, I was a new single mom. I had 2 little boys and was an executive of a growing company. And I got the call to come into the office after a biopsy. And you learn that that's not a call you want, right, to walk into the office. And that started my 11-year journey with a rare form of cancer. So there was only a few thousand people at that time that had been diagnosed worldwide. So it wasn't a well-known territory. And it started with, multiple surgeries to remove the cancer. And as normal treatments, chemo and radiation were not proven treatments for that type of cancer. And so I went about 5 years after those surgeries cancer-free, and then it started to return and expand to different areas within my sinus cavity, and then started to head behind my eye towards the brain, which led to the removal of my eye and navigating through that journey. And I guess they need to say that differently. It led to the removal of the cancer, right, which is what we were trying to remove. The eye was removed as well, but the key part was that the cancer was removed. And so that's been an unexpected journey, certainly, but a lot of blessings along the journey as I've had the opportunity to meet doctors and nurses and people that otherwise I never would have met along my path.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that that there's a bright side to it, because oftentimes that would, for many of us, be hard to find, at least right away. Tell me more about the type of cancer, and for those not on video, they're not going to necessarily be able to see as readily as, or to know as readily as those watching on video, that it did affect your eye, and that you carry quite the statement about that. So help me understand the type of cancer and whatever detail on that you choose to.
Yeah, happy to. The type of cancer is sebaceous carcinoma, and it started in the caruncle, which is the little pink area in the corner of one's eye. That's where it started and where it was first diagnosed. And then we found it was up in my eyelid and down alongside my nose. The journey started there. We thought it was contained and removed. And then as it started to come back, it was going behind my eye towards the brain, which led to a pretty extensive surgery to go in through my skull to remove the tumor resting on the brain, and then remove the eye and also the portions of the sinuses that were affected. And my leg was used as the donor site. So a question I get frequently is, when is that patch coming off? And I smile and say, I hope it never comes off, because this is my skin from my leg that's kind of weaved in here. And after 2 years post-surgery, this is my look. It's not going to sink in anymore. There's not an option for a fake eye or anything like that. It's this is how the healing has come through. And so if you're not on video, I have my own skin from my leg covering up the area where my eye was, and have a unique kind of circle look about that to replace the hole where the eye was.
Yeah. So in just that, from the visual, it was quite an extensive surgery, impacting more than just the removal of an eye, as you said. Is the cancer gone now? Are you cancer free as best they can say that?
So every 3 months I have every 3 months I have an MRI, and I just had one actually yesterday. So I'm still pending the results on that. So I will claim that, yes, I'm still cancer free, because I claim that until the results prove me wrong. But yes, so I will have results next week, actually, as I meet with my neurosurgeon.
Well, I'm glad to hear that it's been successful so far, and certainly hope and wish, just like you do, that yesterday's
Yes.
test comes back reinforcing the fact that the cancer is gone. So there's a couple of areas I want to take the conversation, and let's, for the time being, Diana, stay with the impact of the surgery, not just the visual, physical effect of it, but the mental aspect of it. And you mentioned being a single mom with 2 young boys. How did you navigate what must have been, I'm assuming, you'll tell me, somewhat devastating news, somewhat devastating understanding the impact of the surgery, but also being a mom? And so walk us through that.
So when I was first diagnosed 11 years ago, my boys were 2 and 4.5, so very,
Mm,
very young. And I was newly divorced, and it was a lot to process, and also juggling the role of an executive at the same time. I was extremely thankful that my parents were able to help and step in to
mm,
help with my kids, as my treatment was 4 hours away. So I live near Daytona Beach, Florida, and I traveled down to Miami to Bascom Palmer, which is the #1 eye hospital in the world, the best place to be, but not just a 5-minute drive.
yeah.
And so that was a tough season for myself and for my boys. I didn't want to be away from them, but yet I was thankful that my parents were there to take care
Mhm.
of them. As I navigated to, 2 years ago, when I was prepping for the surgery to remove the tumor in the eye and surrounding areas, that was a different level of intensity. My boys are older, so they were, 15 and 12, and could understand a little bit more. But it is certainly a lot to process when you're thinking about going in for a 12-hour procedure with 4 different surgeons operating on you, one being a neurosurgeon. That
Mm.
takes a whole different level of, I don't know if you call it fear, but just thinking about, okay, what if I don't make it, right? And just making sure that I have everything ready and prepped, right? I am married now, so that's a key portion. When I was a single mom 11 years ago, I had a friend along the way that then we started dating, and now is my husband. So I do have,
Right.
going away for surgery for this time, my kids still stayed with my parents, but they're older, and my husband was with me, beside me, as much as he could be, after I came out of surgery.
Well, speaking of gifts, that's certainly one right there, isn't it?
Yes.
That's a fabulous story. So again, I don't want to stay completely on the cancer and the impact of it. However, I think it's an important setup to what we want to talk about, which is carrying on and caring about others. So it's certainly a very obvious situation for you. And one of the things, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, so I'm not catching you off guard, but I always hear from people that have any type of physical difference or wheelchair, crutches, whatever the case might be, how they can, how they, how they feel and get negative reactions from people who look away. Explain to me and the listeners, please, about uh, the impact of that when we look away, but also what we can do better to make people feel more just human.
I love that question, and I have a few different angles on it. I find that children are they almost are the example of what to do because they don't look away oftentimes. Children look at you, and I love to look back at them and just smile. And if they keep looking, I'll say hi and try to be inviting, because if they want to ask me a question, I'm fine with that, right? I'm very open. This is my look, and it's different, and I'm happy to talk and engage with them. It is adults more frequently than children that tend to look away or not engage. And in those aspects, I look at that and just try to smile and engage with them. I forget sometimes what I look like. I'm just used to the look. So my kids will laugh at me sometimes and be like, Mom, people are looking at you. And I'm like, oh, right. So I will look for a way to smile and engage with them because it's just me at this point. And I've gotten used to it, and I forget that others haven't. I think what's been impactful to me is when people just look at me like it, just say hi, or just acknowledge, just smile like you would any other person, because it's what's inside that matters so much more than what's on the outside. And that's how I strive to be. But I will tell you, it's given me a new level of awareness or empathy towards people that are different, right? Whether it's missing a leg or in a wheelchair, like it's given me a new level of understanding of what it's like to be in those shoes of being different. I talked with some middle school students. I was in multiple classrooms talking about my career and what I do, but I knew I needed to start my introduction with, okay, what kind of questions do you have, right? I shared with them a little bit about my story and just let them ask. And many of their questions went to, well, do you get made fun of, right? And all of those elements. And so I actually very much enjoy those opportunities to be with middle school students or students going through all the changes in life, to be able to encourage them, right? It's okay, right? We're all going to be different, right? And we all can just smile and navigate through it and try to treat each other just like see what's on the inside, right? Not so much as what's on the outside.
What a terrific message. And when you say middle school, I assume you're talking in the range of 13 to 16?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a very, very difficult time at that age, no matter what. And for you to be able to go in and help them understand that there are differences in people and it's okay, and that you are different from others and it's okay. That is just so powerful. And that leads to, let me move away from the specifics of the cancer and its impact, physical impact. But I want to talk to you, Diana, both about your professional growth, but also let's start more with what's a direct takeaway from what you just said, and that's your personal mission of being committed to making others feel seen, heard, and valued in every interaction. How do you do that? How do you go about doing that? And how do you help others do the same?
So I will state first that it's a bar that I set for myself. I don't always make it every day or every interaction.
You mean you're not perfect?
But I think being on this journey starting 11 years ago, I started my year thinking of all the things I wanted to do, and going to lots of hospitals and doctor's appointments was not on the list. But I worked to shift to, okay, but why am I in those hospital and spaces, and what is my opportunity to get to talk to people or get to interact with people? And that has been pretty impactful for me personally, but also for doctors. So many doctors and nurses have people walking in that are just upset, they're frustrated, and they get weary. And so my challenge to myself personally was, yeah, I'm here because I have an appointment, but how can I help them? How can I make their day better? How can I add value to them? And that has been the doctor that first diagnosed my cancer locally. I have lunch with him like every few months. I can call him. He's a friend, right? My doctors in Miami, that I have been going to see for 11 years, I come into the office and I get hugs, right? I'm like a part of a team. And I love that, but that happened just because I worked on not making it about me, but how can I add value to the people that I'm going to see? And sometimes it was the patient beside me. There's so many times that people would be alone for a medical procedure and not have anybody there or anybody they could call. And just being conscious of that has been really, I think it actually helped me to not focus on what I was going through and looking for ways to help others. So it helped me in that endeavor, but it also has been a way for me to just extend a hand or add value to people and help encourage them and help them see that they can move forward and that they can have a friend. They may just meet them in the doctor's office, but that's okay. It's a way to connect and just add value to others.
That's a fabulous goal. We all as humans, all of us want attachment. And sometimes it's best and the only way is to have temporary attachment. But in a waiting room with the doctor's office, if someone's there nervous and someone like you is there to just give them a smile or a bit of encouragement, that could mean the world to them. That could be the difference in, frankly, not just their day, but as they move forward with whatever their challenge is. On a professional business front, you do coaching, you do consulting, you're a certified DISC consultant in the Maxwell Leadership Group. How has, if at all, this impacted or altered your life from a professional perspective?
Well, I'll add some humor to this. So I admit that the first time I presented in front of a group with one eye, it kind of gave me some perspective of how I needed to make sure not to cut off one side of the room, right? Because your vision changes.
Okay.
So that was a bit, I could make light of that. When I do DISC workshops, a large part of why you do a DISC or a communication workshop is because we have often blind spots in our communication. We think that everybody communicates or they're wired just like we are. And so we don't realize, right, that we have a blind spot in how we're connecting with others. So I will often introduce myself and explain, I have a literal blind spot today, and just kind of use that as a way to connect into the blind spots that we're going to work to uncover in our DISC workshop together. So that's been I've had to learn how to introduce my look into whatever I'm doing in terms of speaking or facilitating a workshop. So that way we're connected and they understand where I'm at. I work to use stories and be transparent as much as I can to bring those into my professional dynamics so people understand I'm not just doing a workshop on choosing positive or overcoming adversity. I have lived it, and so I can, share my lessons and my hard times and use that as the story for them to connect to, because stories are powerful in terms of learning lessons and application.
100% true. I do a lot of DISC work on communication myself and don't have the same opportunity to speak about blind spots, at least not with the authenticity that you do. That's amazing that you have chosen and are comfortable doing that. So a tip of the hat to you for that. How, if any, has your professional life changed prior to 11 years ago and the diagnosis through now?
When I was first diagnosed, I was an executive of an automotive marketing company. And I'm trying to think, in a year after I was diagnosed, we were working on selling that company. So if anybody's been involved in that, it's a busy time. You've got to do your day job, and also work on all the numbers and analysis needed to position the company for sale and then answer all the questions that come through. And so that was a season we navigated through. We sold that company and became a part of a larger company. And that was a good growth for me professionally to be a part of that dynamic, and also to shift from being a part of a small company to a large global organization. I learned some things that I liked doing and things I didn't want to do with them, but that's okay. We learn along the way. I met some fabulous people, and that's often a big piece that I've learned along my journey. I am most connected to doing things that are with people. I am not the great task person. I am not somebody you want to drive your finances or to be your CFO. Like I know that about myself. My passion is around people and helping people to grow and develop and to see their potential. And so that is where I have worked to shift. I had a season working as a consultant for a technology company, Coastal Cloud. And even in that dynamic, I spent more of my time with the people and helping them to understand the technology, the change, and what they were doing. I'm much better suited that way. And so now, as I spend even more time focusing on the people dynamic, whether it's leadership teams, teamwork, and communication, that's knowing where my passion is and spending my time where I'm most passionate is most beneficial to the people I'm serving as well as to myself.
Yes. That's something we should all strive for, is trying to find our personal sweet spot and working in that area. And that's one of the magical things that DISC can help bring. So I'm really glad to hear that you are so involved in that and use it in the way that you describe using it. You talk a lot about, Diana, being authentic and showing how to live and lead with authenticity and how to live with resiliency. Talk more about that, would you please?
It's very, very relevant topic for today, actually. I have found so much in learning to be a leader as well as watching the leaders that I've respected the most. I respected those the most that were authentic, admitted when they messed up, were humble, right? When they knew they weren't the best at something and would ask for help. That's who I respected the most. So that's who I strive to be. And I mess up, right? And I had a team meeting earlier today on a client project and wanted to be open, right, on what the team did well. But these are areas I could have done better. And because they already know it. So if I acknowledge it, then we can have open conversation together. There's many leaders that don't want to be humble and acknowledge their humanness, but the people already know it. So it's works so much better to be authentic and just be real about where gaps are and where I have opportunities to be better, because then I'm a true, like, authentic teammate and can really build bridges with the people around me. So I got to live that out about an hour ago. So good question today. I think on the other portion, when I was writing my book around the lessons from the cancer journey, it was really important for me to be very authentic and real in what I shared. And I'm touched when people come up to me that I've never met before and say, Diana, I feel like I know you from reading your book, and can I give you a hug? I love that because that means I did what I accomplished. I wanted to be authentic and real about what it's like to live the journey, and what it's also like to keep doing life when you're on the journey. I think many people say, Diana, if I had your diagnosis or navigating through what you did, I would have hid, right? I wouldn't have kept going like you did. And doesn't mean it's easy, right? But it is important for me to show people that they can do it, right? There is a way forward. And my resilience was fired by my faith, my boys, right? It was so important to me to show them what an example is going through adversity and being resilient. I was committed that I was not going to be a victim of cancer. I was going to thrive cancer. I'm been refined by it, but I was determined that it was not going to define me and who I was. And so I think those elements of authenticity, and in order to be resilient, you have to have a reason why to be resilient, right?
Right.
Like that why has to be pretty strong to keep fighting and moving forward.
Yeah, you have to be able to answer the question, what's the point, right? So the comment you made about some people saying, "Oh, I'm not sure I could have done what you've done," I assume that's maybe a natural reaction for people that haven't had to face the adversity, because I don't believe that we as humans know what we can and will do in adverse situation until we're really in the adverse situation.
Right.
Does that it strikes me that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would just assume you hadn't been going through life saying, "Boy, if I have a big cancer scare, I'm going to go through it and be a cancer thriver," as you call it, which is a phrase I
Right.
love. But once you were faced with it, you took the time to evaluate, to get settled with it. Whatever you did, explain how you found your own resiliency and your own determination.
So I have to, when I have a picture of this in the book, but when I was a freshman in college, I read Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning, which
Hmm.
is a big lesson around no matter what happens to me, nobody can steal my freedom to choose how I respond. And I had forgotten that I wrote a paper around that. And I found it when I was shortly after my big surgery. And it gave me chills because it was written to like my younger self to my older self saying, if someday you get cancer, so you will have to decide, right,
Wow.
how you're going to respond and if you're going to move forward um, with strength or if you're going to be a victim to it. And so that helps me to realize so much that how we respond to adversity, it starts well before the adversity. Like our preparation for how we're going to show up has started well before it, because it's really hard to figure out resilience when you haven't done the preparation ahead of time or done the personal growth, right? And those
Yeah.
elements ahead of time.
What I find really powerful, first of all, if the listeners, if y'all haven't read Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for
Yeah.
Freedom, please do. It is so powerful, and the message is just, well, powerful and resonates and is relevant to every one of us. But it really makes me wonder. I had said I doubt you were sitting around thinking how you'd handle it, but in fact, it was already inside of you. In fact, you
Right.
had written about it in college, and then you hadn't discovered your letter until after the main surgery. So it was in you. It was
Yeah.
tapped in you. You've mentioned your book a couple of times, and I've not, so I'm going to now. The book is uh, available on Amazon and probably other places, but it's called Uniquely Imperfect, Uniquely Qualified. Where's that title come from?
That title comes from some time as I was working through my radiation season, and that was 7 weeks away from home. And I had a lot of extra thinking time on me. And so I was doing things that I don't normally do in life. And I was thinking and reflecting and working on submitting speaking engagements for the Maxwell Leadership Conference to be on stage to share my story. And I was trying to work through what my message was. And so that title came out of that message, that if we can move past the adversity and look for ways to serve and add value to people, we have a unique qualification to help people that nobody else has. Because
Hmm.
if we can use our adversity to learn and to help others move forward, we have a unique qualification there. And I have had examples of that in terms of, I haven't met another patient that has the same type of cancer I have, but I've met, my doctor in Miami has asked me to talk to multiple patients that are going to have a similar surgery and end up having a similar look like me. And so I'm uniquely qualified to talk to them and help them
Hmm.
understand what it's going to be like, what it's going to feel like, and to answer questions that only a fellow like warrior can answer. And that applies certainly with those patients, but also with a lot of other scenarios in life where when you can move past the adversity to the lesson, it gives you such a great opportunity to share and impact others. That
So
unique qualification.
Yeah, a very unique qualification in your case. And in that context, what a gift to the other people that are going to be going through something similar to have you not just to say it'll be okay, but with your attitude and your approach of resiliency and it's not going to define me and I'm going to accept it and adapt and move forward. And another thing that impresses me, Diana, is your doctor being empathetic enough to call you and say, please talk to these patients, because a lot of surgeons don't do that type of thing. A lot of surgeons say, I'm going to do what I'm going to do and you're going to get what you get, and then I'm going to go do it, whatever. That's really amazing. Were you, jumping back to the business side, the professional side, were you part of the Maxwell Leadership Group prior to, or did you join that group during or after?
I had joined prior. Actually, let me think through that. I joined in 2019. So it was in the part of my cancer journey where I thought I was cancer free. So that's when I joined in that season. But I have followed and read a lot of Maxwell's work going back years before that. I would buy the VHS series kits and use them with my teams, because helping anybody that has been a part of my team or reports to me to have professional and personal growth opportunities is just a passion of mine. So I had, the VHS 17 Laws of a Team Player from many years ago.
Okay. And for the younger listeners, just Google VHS, because I won't be able to take the time to explain it to you, but be grateful that's not your the only way you can see things these days. Streaming is so much better.
That's right. That's right.
One of the things that I think is also very impressive is your commitment to leading through influence. You had that belief prior to your cancer, prior to the return of your cancer, prior to the operation, and prior to today. Where did that come from?
My power, my leadership and influence.
Your commitment to influence, your commitment to leading through influence.
I think a few different areas, right? I can remember the impacts on my life, like growing up and playing sports, and how you work to build trust and influence others in that team environment. Like, it doesn't just happen, right? Those relationships and commitments to each other and how you work together, it happens because of your relationships, your trust, and your influence. In my first role as an executive, I was the youngest by probably 15 years, and I didn't have the same title as the other ones did. But I worked hard to earn the respect of people, and so I always would smile when they would come to me. I had the lower title that rather than going to the senior VP, but because I had earned like their trust and respect and the influence was there, I learned to title doesn't matter, right? What matters is like my influence and the respects that I've earned. Like that's what matters.
Well, that's a great thing to learn, and I'm glad you did, and thank you for sharing that. What, Diana, you said something very interesting, that you wrote in college your paper based on Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I think I said Man's Search for Freedom earlier. Man's Search for Meaning. You wrote it as a letter to your older self. I'm going to ask you now a question that's kind of become somewhat cliche. What would you tell your younger self now?
So I didn't realize at the time I was writing it to my older self, but when I look at it in retrospect, I see that. Okay. What would I tell my younger self? Likely to have spent more time understanding what my passion was versus just moving into different roles. I watched my younger self and how often I would say, well, I just want to do this, right? Or you want to try to control the outcome versus being patient, right? And understanding where the right position is and places, and showing patience in your career journey or your life choices journey, we don't always have to know the outcome right away. It's okay to wait and to take time and to make sure that it's the right choice and the right fit.
Great. We all have points in our life where we get advice. You can answer this one of two ways or both. What's the worst advice you've ever gotten, either just in life prior to your cancer or since you've had your cancer?
The worst advice.
The worst advice you got.
I would say some of the worst advice has been, I don't know if it's called advice, but to ignore to ignore the opportunity I had to control what I could. And so many times people go, why don't you just eat whatever you want to eat, right? Or just, do nothing, right? Just watch TV and veg, right? You have cancer, right? Like you can just use this as an excuse to chill. And that advice I ignored because I was determined that I was going to take care of what I could, right? So I could still work out every day. I was going to do that. I could eat well because lots of studies would say that eating well, right, particularly when you have cancer near your brain, that makes a big difference. So that advice, right, of, it's okay, Diana, you can feel sorry for yourself and do whatever you want, right? I ignored that advice and I'm super thankful I did because I probably wouldn't be here so confident and smiling at you if I had taken that advice, so.
And what's the best advice you've ever gotten? And in particular, did you get some great advice that you chose not to follow and you now regret?
Oh, wow. These are good questions for me today. The best advice, I'm going to think through my cancer story, people, but I think some of the best advice has come from my surgeons along the way. And so I have had some non-traditional surgeons because they have a caring heart that not everybody gets to see in their surgeons, but to remind me to take care and focus on what's most important, which is, faith and family before work and before all the other elements. Because when you're trying to balance like all these different things, you don't want to let anything fall, but just that reminder to focus on what's most important in life. And I get not everybody may say faith or children, right? But whatever is most important, to make sure that that's what you're true to first, because in today's environment, everybody is competing, right, at a different level, right? We've got our phones everywhere and all these different things, right? It's so easy to get distracted. What is most important, and make sure that you're intentional on that in those relationships and that focus.
Okay. Now, this is a question I ask every guest, and you may have just answered it based on how I asked the previous question. But in the context of your life, in the context of whatever message you want to give, Diana, what's the point that you want people to take from this conversation?
I would say the point is when you hit moments that things aren't going well, you hit cancer, whatever it may be, don't focus on you. Go focus on how you can help somebody else. Because I have found over and over again that has helped me to shift and to move forward. When I go and help somebody else, it changes the trajectory of their life as well as mine. And it has helped me to move forward and to add value to people that otherwise I never would have had the opportunity to.
That's powerful, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate your insights. I've been speaking today with Diana Fritz, leadership and change consultant, cancer thriver, not letting it define who she is, but charging through life and adapting to it. And the author of Uniquely Imperfect, Uniquely Qualified, a book that if you have cancer or know anyone that does, or just if you generally want to find out about resilience, you might want to check out. Diana, again, thank you so much for your time and your insights, and I wish you'd continued success, both personally and in your ongoing efforts to help others, because the ripple effect of how you help others, the ripple effect of, by example, going back to early when you talked about to those young children, those young kids, those young adults, about, accept the fact that people are doing that type of ripple effect. If one kid, if 5 kids learn something from that and spread it, you've really helped the world. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate your time as well.
Thanks for tuning in. And if you like what you've heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise there is value to be gained in every one. Taking a second to rate, review, and share the show helps make us more discoverable and enables others to find out what's the point. If you'd like to learn more about Bill Ellis and his services, please visit his website, billellis.com. See you next time.